greetings, afternoon. And, well, before we get started, there's a lot of donuts. I think it's, what, 2 donuts per person? Yeah? So if you do get hungry, yeah, don't hold back. If you get hungry halfway through the presentation, by all means, come down and take one. Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure. Welcome. What we're going to do here, we're going on a journey to discover the secret of cultural excellence. And we've got Bill and Ted here. They're going to accompany us on this journey, and hopefully we're going to meet a whole bunch of other interesting characters who can help us on our quest. The objective, Brian, is to feel awesome and bodacious by the end of this presentation. I hope you're all fans of the film. Some of you are looking like, what the hell are you talking about? Have you seen the film, Casey? Oh, okay, well, this is all going to be totally lost on you, so I hope you enjoy. First up in our adventure, we're heading to Turin in 1990. Who remembers the game? You guys remember the name of the game? Yeah. It was really difficult, I think, to overstate just how important this match was. Some of the players in this match, they would have had parents and grandparents who fought, literally fought against each other in the Second World War. And it followed the 1986 World Cup, where there was the Hand of God incident, the old Diego Maradona thing. And also England had underperformed in the first stages of this tournament. And they managed to scrape through. I think they scored just twice. So in short, really, the pressure was on in this particular game. And as a result, 26 million people in the UK watched this game on TV. That's around half the population at the time. And as we've just seen there, Germany score first, that kind of lucky deflection there. England bounce back when Gary Lineker scores, but ultimately it goes to extra time, and then England lose on penalties. Would anyone care to take a guess as to what happened next? Brian, you've got a bit of an advantage here, because I wonder if maybe you might like to take a punt. Maybe you know the story already. No? Okay. Anyone else? Well, yeah, I mean, like immediately, like within seconds of the end of the match. Well, okay. Well, I'll tell you. What happened was a uniquely British phenomenon. This only happens in the UK. What happened is, after Chris Waddle, he smashes the ball over the bar. 26 million people decide that what they really need to soothe their frayed nerves is a nice cup of tea. Yeah. And as I say, this is a UK thing only. And what happened as a result, there was a massive surge in the demand for electricity. You're nodding your head now because you know what this is, yeah. What happened? 1.1 million kettles went on. There was a surge in the demand for electricity, and I think it was 2,800 megawatts is the figure that I've got written down here. And it's, as I say, it's a UK thing only. It's called a TV pickup. And what happens is, we finish watching Pat Butcher and Ian Beale doing their thing on EastEnders, and we have a cup of tea. And what that means is, I don't know if there still is, I assume it's automated now, but I think at the time there would have been a bloke watching Coronation Street waiting for the ad break, and then he pushes some kind of button to say, more power. And 35 years later, this is still the biggest TV pickup in history. We'll talk more about that in a minute. But before we go any further, I'll quickly introduce myself to those of you who don't know me. I think pretty much everyone does. I'm Joel, CEO, and I wrote down General Legend in a fit of creativity at Switchplane Limited this morning when I was revising my notes. But we're a software engineering firm. We're based in Foundry, and what we do is we help small businesses to grow through digitization, automation and digitization, that way around, and more recently via artificial intelligence. Now, software engineering, the fundamental skill really in software engineering. So you start with a big problem. What you're trying to do is break it down into a much smaller model of some kind that you can then use to sort of explain the world. And that's what we've got here. This whole talk really is about creating a culture of excellence, and that's quite a big, sort of vague, abstract problem. So what I'm going to hopefully do for you now is break it down into a model that you can then apply in your own organizations. I've got 3 key facts before we move on. I haven't written a book yet. I do occasionally wear wigs in presentations. The wig bag, the all-important wig bag. And I'm on a quest to get to 10,000 followers on LinkedIn. I'm on track to get to there by around about 2054. So please, if you could follow me, that would be much appreciated. Yeah, so the Italian 90 TV pickup story is, to me, that's sort of the perfect example of culture in action, British culture in particular. Somehow, as a nation, we all collectively agreed that what do we do when we get knocked out of the World Cup? Well, we have a cup of tea. So it's a convention or a habit. It's a thing that we somehow collectively agreed to do. And so if culture is just things that people do, the habits that we have, then every business has a culture, because businesses are just people who do things, right? And while I think that's true, it's not especially practical. You know, I can't create a culture of excellence by simply saying just be good at stuff. I can't say to Chris Waddle, just be good at taking penalties. It doesn't work. So we have to break it down. So I present to you Bill and Ted's totally awesome culture matrix dude. And we'll talk through this. This is probably the most important slide in the talk. And what we've got here is we're trying to categorize the activities that businesses and organizations do, okay? Hopefully it's self-explanatory, but I will talk it through. So on the top left here, and but yes, there is a laser thing there, but it's not working on the screen, so I'll have to point. We've got the formal stuff that businesses do here, what I've called the rules. We've got the informal stuff, okay, the conventions that sit on the right-hand side. So in the top left is a rule, okay? You mustn't kill people, okay? That is, most people adhere to that rule, I think. Things that everyone does. We have to do that. If we don't do that, we get locked up or we get shut down, okay? Then moving on to the right, the excellent moves. These are conventions. There's no turn up on time police. There's no go and find clients police, but we will do them as businesses because otherwise we don't make money. But there's no rule that says we have to do it. And if you're in a construction firm, turning up on time isn't even a convention. It's more of a guideline. We then move down to the things that only we do. Okay, these are things that are unique to us. I've referred to it as the kind of the pizza sauce recipe. These are our unique documented systems and processes. These are the rules that exist in our business, how we have decided to do things. And importantly, we've written down this is how we do it. And then on the right-hand side there, we've got the nice touches, the customer service type stuff. I went and gave this talk over the road at PRG, and when we arrived there, Simon Groves, who some of you will know, he was waiting there already, opened the door before we knocked on it, before we arrived. That's an example of a nice touch. You know, Simon doesn't have a rule written down that he's taught to his staff. We must always be waiting by the front door, ready to let the guests in. But it's an example of a nice touch. And then at the bottom here, we've got the things we definitely don't do. In this case here, we formalized it. It's a rule. Lush, they've made a concrete decision and talked about it a lot. They don't do social media, okay? Their target market is kind of the, I guess, girls 13 to 20, right? It's a generalization, but that's the same sort of demographic of people who are seriously harmed by some of the Instagram content, so that's their reason for not being on social media. And then on the right-hand side, for the designers in the room, no Comic Sans. We have a rule, a couple of rules at Switchplane. totally off limits. We don't outsource our work. So if you hire us, you get us. You know, we don't subcontract it to anyone. The right-hand side, these are kind of those cultural no-nos. I was in Sainsbury's earlier getting my lunch, and this at the self-checkout, and there was two blokes. They were having a blazing row because one of them had queue jumped at the self-checkout, and he went absolutely mental, this bloke. It was quite entertaining. I think their argument took longer than actually it would have taken just to, queue up. But anyway, it's a cultural no-no, especially in this country. So that's Bill and Ted's ultimate matrix of culture. So I think, by definition, the only way to excel and separate yourself from your competitors and other organizations that do what you do is if you focus your time and your energy and your efforts on the things that only you do, okay? In consistently not doing the things that you don't do as well. I've got Napoleon on here. Who remembers how he described the British? Anyone know this? Yes, thank you. He described us as a nation of shopkeepers. He didn't describe us as a nation of non-murderers. Okay, as it happened, yeah, a nation of shopkeepers. Although we did, in fact, do quite well at Waterloo. So the thing that makes us British isn't the fact that murder is frowned upon. It's all the other stuff. It's the no queue jumping. It's the talking about the weather. It's drinking tea. It's apologising to someone who's bumped into us, right? And it's clearly their fault. Okay. So I believe that an organisation has a culture of excellence when it's really nailed the stuff that everyone does. It's doing the basics really well, and this allows it to spend time on the other things that set it apart. Okay, so it's got a good business model, it's got happy, competent staff, and it's got good systems. And this is my specialism, our specialism at Switchplane, good systems, and that's what this talk is about. Culture, obviously, there's people aspects to culture as well. I'm not really going to touch that. You need to go and find someone who specialises in that aspect of culture to talk about that. I'm going to focus on systems. And if an organisation gets that stuff right, what we can do is we can start shifting resource into the things that only we do and that we don't do. And if organizations spend more time on that, they start to get really good at it, okay? And then this is how you start to develop your USP and become excellent. So the idea is if I practice penalty kicks for an hour a day, then I'm going to get better, maybe, possibly. Additionally, organizations can then spend more time on the nice touches or the informal stuff. And the end result is that what was formal, so Simon Groves' nice touch of opening the door, he can turn that into a rule, okay? An actual, this is how we do things at PRG. And that is what we're aiming for. That's what I think is the definition of a culture of excellence. So one way to measure how excellent we are is simply to look at how much time we are spending on the stuff that only our organization does. Okay, it's quite a crude measure, but it's a way to measure it. So how do we spend more time on the stuff that sets us apart? Good systems is how we can do that. They will save us time, they'll save us money, they'll save us energy. Good systems will empower people to do a good job. Good systems will give people confidence and direction with what they are doing. The flip side of that, bad systems get in the way and slow people down. Has anyone ever raged at the system? We were at a meeting yesterday with a potential client, and the lady there was explaining that it takes her, how long was it? A day? 1 day to raise a sales invoice. 1 day. Okay. Why is she still working there? Is that how long she worked there? 18 months. And this is still an issue. Absolutely raging. Bad systems will make people leave your company. They make people indifferent. They start to not care about what things are happening. So I've got a simple framework which I'll talk through how we can get started with good systems. I don't want to get too bogged down in detail. I'll just focus on the fundamentals. So at a strategic level, I think there's 3 things that are required, and you have to do all 3 Okay, you can't just pick one, you've got to do all three. First one, standards. What type of tea is the correct type of tea? The second one, communication. I think that's the one that most businesses are weak at. I think the other two are easier. And then enforcement, the carrot and the stick. So we'll talk about, yes, this is where I get to put on my wig. We'll talk about standards first. Yes, so the question, yeah, I've talked about Ronald quite a lot, and the question that I always ask is, how does a bloke in a clown suit and a stupid wig and a bunch of teenagers run the most successful restaurant brand of all time? And it's partly because Ronald has got some serious OCD. Serious OCD. He's absolutely obsessed with standards. I worked there, 25 years ago? Tom did as well. I wonder if you could remember. I bet you could remember those 5 characteristics as well. 2 minutes in line, 1 minute in the counter was the standard. I can still remember all the kind of the correct temperature for the grill, what they're supposed to be, how the correct mix of the Coke with the fizzy water. Absolutely obsessed with standards, with setting it. And I can still, 25 years later, remember those. I didn't have to Google that or look it up. That was there, and it's because they set the standard and they're really good at enforcing it. Now the good thing is, standards are not universal. Okay, standards are relative. Anyone here like their tea like this? Good. Yeah. And I describe this: one person's excellent is another person's bogus. Ronald has a totally different definition of excellence compared to a Michelin star restaurant. And the good thing about that is it means that you get to decide what the standard is. You get to decide what excellence is. So let's have a quick argument about how to make a cup of tea. 5 different entities here, 5 different ways to make tea. No one agrees on the right way to make tea. So if you're a business that makes tea for people and you want your customers to have a repeatable, consistent, good cup of tea every time, then you better decide what your standard's going to be. Also worth noting that having the standard means that your margin is consistent as well. So if you're using too much milk or if you're using too many tea leaves, then your profit margin is going to go down. So you've got to decide the standard based on what's good for your customer and what's good for your margin. Standards, relatively easy. I think everyone understands that. Communication. I think this is the trickier one, I think. I'll take the wig off now. It's really hot. When you first start a business, it's just you. Okay, you are your own. You only communicate with the voices in your head. So you do the things how you think they should be done. Then you hire a couple of people, and those people will directly observe how you do things. You don't actually have to teach them specifically. They learn by watching you. So I think the HR and the leadership consultants will call this that standards are caught, not taught. And then as your business grows, you hire some people. Maybe maybe you've got a sales manager to run a sales team or whatever. You've got people who are a step removed from how you do things. So now they can't observe you. They don't have a role model. Okay. So in this instance, this is where we have to really start communicating effectively, consciously thinking about how we're teaching our staff. And in this scenario, the leadership gurus, standards are taught, not caught. And as businesses grow, your team can't learn by observing you, okay? So, and remember, excellence means different things to different people. And growth will mean that standards will ultimately slip. So you get this kind of disconnect between your leadership goals and your standards versus your employees. So you have to teach your employees what excellence is. Again, you can't just say, be really good at football. It doesn't work. So you've got to communicate, and you've got to do it continually. So I've got a good model here for communication, which I recommend, this book, which I'll explain shortly. So I'm sure everyone does kind of policy updates, general announcements, all that kind of boring stuff. But the message I want to get across to you is you've got to focus your energy on the things that only you do. So you've got to communicate about the things that only you do. And the best way to do that, I think, is through storytelling. And that's where this book recommendation comes in, made to stick by Chip and Dan Heath. I think it's only a tenner on Amazon. They have a very good model of communication, which they call the success model. It's just an acronym here of that: simple, unexpected, concrete, credible, emotional stories. So keeping it simple, unexpected. If you can have some kind of twist, that works well. Concrete means that it's a specific message and not some vague thing. Credible means that you believe it. Emotional, it makes you feel something, okay? And then finally, the stories, self-explanatory. And I used that model to open my talk, and hopefully that will make it memorable. Hello. Take a donut with you.
I'll love one when I come back.
Yeah. Okay, go for it. Okay, enforcement. Step 3. So Ronald, again, he structures things in the restaurant to have continual training and feedback. So all the they all have the different color badges. You start with the green while you're on probation, then yellow, then white, etc. And you earn the next level up. You earn your stars by doing these things called OCLs, observation checklists, and you have to get a certain score to pass. So what they have is they have managers and trainers who are continually evaluating the staff, evaluating the crew. They're continuously checking that the standard is being met. And it's tied to pay as well. So if you've got more OCLs and you're doing well, then it feeds back into your pay rise. Now, in a typical small business or smaller organization, actually even in big organizations, to be honest, your main enemy is going to be the dinosaur here. So this is how you see change as the person trying to drive things forward. You're looking at this lovely vista there. This is how your dinosaurs see change. They see the kind of the world-ending meteor heading towards you. So part of your communication strategy has to be dealing with enforcement strategy. Has to be dealing with the dinosaurs. The way to do this is you start small. Okay, pick a very small problem first, and convince the dinosaurs that the world isn't going to end by fixing it. A culture of excellence is self-enforcing, I think. Self-enforcing. And what I mean by that is that you can use your peers to hold each other accountable. Your peers will hold each other accountable. So I think about my kids in this scenario. My son in particular isn't really interested in my opinion. I think most of us have been through that in our lives, either as a parent or as a child. But they do care what their mates think, absolutely. So it's the same in business. You've got to do, please, donuts. Please, take a donut.
Hard work, business.
It is, yeah.
Year after year after year.
Yep. What was I saying? Oh yeah, culture of excellence. Yes. Thank you, Freddie. He doesn't listen to me, no. So what you've got to do is you've got to find the people in your organisation who are good at holding their peers to account. Okay, the kind of the natural leaders. Our business coach Martin Riley calls it cultural architect. That's his phrase for it. In politics, they call it a big beast for some reason. I don't know why, but that's what they call them. And often those people are potentially the dinosaurs. They're the people who are going to be most cynical about stuff. But if you can get them on side, then you can allow them to be an instrument through which you can apply your change. That's a bit more of a people thing than a systems thing. But there are systems that you can put in place to support that process, such as peer review. We have a system called booms in our business, where you can give someone a boom, and that can be either a constructive criticism or it can be a kudos thing. And this kind of helps to build that kind of self-reinforcing model. And of course, we do all the usual HR stuff like good appraisal processes and so on. Now, this is where IT and software can make a big difference, because if you build a system such that there's only one way to do the job, then the system is enforced. You can't work around it. You have to do it this way, so it's self-enforcing. Elon Musk. I wrote in my notes that he's quite a controversial character. And I'm quite a fan of understatement. But I did write this before the election result. And there is no denying that he has transformed the culture at Twitter, whether or not you think it's a good thing. He has transformed it, and there is a lesson to be learned for us as how we can drive change in our own organisations. So with the standards, he's got this thing where he tries to strip it right back to first principles. If physics says it's possible, then that's his arbiter. That's what he uses to set the standard. Anything else is waste. With communication, I mean, the guy doesn't shut up. He's like continually hammering home his message. I mean, he bought an entire social media platform so that he could talk, right? It's brutal, direct, simple, unfiltered. Enforcement, do it my way or you're fired. That's his approach. As I say, this is not an endorsement. Merely an observation. You may have seen this email doing the rounds on social media, Elon's email. This is the second time he sent this email. It's basically a word-for-word copy of the first. But again, we've got all three elements. We've got the standards, the 40 hours in the office every week. We've got the communication via a story. It's a very short story, 2 sentences. That's why I lived in the factory so much, so that people could see me working alongside them. If I didn't, then Tesla would have gone bankrupt. And then C, the enforcement, classic, do it or you're fired, basically. Now, ethics aside, from a purely practical point of view, as smaller organizations, we don't have access to the same resources that Elon Musk has, and we certainly don't have an army of fanboys who will swallow his bullshit. So we have to be a bit smarter about how we do things. We can't come in like the bulldozer. So how do we approach this? I'll explain business process mapping in a minute, but first of all, if you haven't, you need a CRM. Who's got CRM? A handful of people, okay, good. Who's got a finance system like Xero or QuickBooks? A few more, yeah, okay, good. And then some kind of documents system like Word or whatever, yeah. Now, if you haven't got those, then you're at the wrong talk. You shouldn't be here. You should be going and sorting that out, okay? Get that sorted first and then come back and we'll have a chat. But then the next step is this business process mapping session. And what we're doing here basically is, it sounds fancy, it's not. It's just writing down a flowchart of how your business works, basically. And here's an example. It's a really good way to document how businesses actually work instead of how you think they work. What we're trying to do here is we're looking at the time, money, energy, skill required to do each of these functions here, and then we can start to work out where the bottlenecks are in the business, where we can apply some change to make it easier, more efficient, cheaper, quicker. I suggest that you start in the gap between your marketing and your finance. You want to start in the middle, in your operations, the delivery of your product, because that's your business model. That's how you actually turn the inquiry into money, okay, is that bit in the middle. So start there with your core business and focus on the revenue generation. Switchplane, we do a process mapping workshop for slightly bigger organizations. Might waive the rule if you supply donuts. You can do it yourself, but often it's better to get in a third party so you can have kind of an objective view on things, forces you to think a bit more like a customer. You'll identify things that you can improve. You can either take that away and do it, or you can speak to someone about how you might go about delivering that. Also, if you enjoyed my talk and you like free lunch, then I'm doing another one on the, 21st of March. I think it's a morning thing, isn't it, Sarah? It's at the Wellshurst Golf Club near Horham. Haven't written it, but it's going to teach you how to go from average to amazing. That's the brief. I'm not the only speaker there, by the way. There's 3 or 4 others. Not that it really matters, because obviously you'd only be there for me. But it might sway your decision, bit of networking, etc. So thank you for listening. 3 thoughts to finish on. First, just get one thing right before you move on. If If you try to do too much too quickly, then things will stall. Second, don't be afraid of doing something badly. Just start it, and persistence will yield success. And finally, most importantly, be excellent to each other. Any questions at all? Thank you.